Oh, yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Here we go. I've hit the button. We cannot turn back. We must move forward. This is a one-way tour of the Magic Factory, and I can't wait to introduce my guest today. He is an absolute badass. He is a tour de force, a global tour de force, a global leader and marketing thought leader and advisor to the stars. He executes multi-product, multi-geo, global GTM strategies. He's been a speaker at multiple conferences, including one on AI, global head of market strategy at Kyriba. Bob Stark, welcome, sir.
Casey, how you doing?
Man, how did we get you? How are you on this show, man? You are like everywhere. You're doing all the things. I don't have time for everything.
There's a simple answer to that because you're an email master and you found a way to say, no, you're going to make sure you answer this email. You're going to get on my calendar. I love it. I'm glad you did, but it's actually a good marketing lesson to all those out there. It's like, get good at email. Know that people are reading it, but they don't necessarily respond. Doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means they haven't actually found the moment to get back to you. So
totally. And personal too, right? None of this, let's invite 3,000 people. And, no, it's very targeted. Like, I want to talk to Bob. I want to get this thing going. And with that, I need to stop talking and pass you this thing. It's heavy though, but I'm pretty sure you got this. So, okay.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
That's
go ahead.
awesome.
I'm going to pass you Thor's hammer here. Go ahead. Grab that.
I want that. Oh my goodness.
You got it?
I do have it. I actually really want one of those. We got to talk about that after.
We'll talk about that. This is the original. So this is the actual Thor's hammer, which you just grabbed. So take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, a bogus strategy. Set the record straight once and for all.
I only get one though. That seems unfair.
Oh, you can keep smashing, man. Take that hammer. Just keep,
all right, we can have a little fun with it. All right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So there's actually a couple different ways to go with it. Here's one that I find is super interesting. Anyone marketing gets this and will go, yes, that's me. Is let's let marketing just fix this up a little bit. Let's get marketing on this to make it look better. That's one myth that I think, yes, we can do that. We have the creative directors in our team, but that's not what we do. Yeah. It is not the value of marketing. It's just like, it's not just lead generation. It's not just branding. Marketing is so many different things. And that's the one where someone, and gosh knows, there's a lot of someones that do that. They'll send you a fact sheet. Like, can you just make this look better? I just need to send it out, just tweak it a little bit. And you look at it and you're like, that is the worst thing I've ever seen in the history of things. We're not just going to touch that up. We need to really figure out what the heck you're doing there. So
yeah, because it's probably not just the graphics that need some help, right? It's never what the hell, you're using a tagline from the 60s. We don't even sell that anymore.
You look at it and go, why would you say that? Why? Who would read this? Like, who's, anyway, we could go on and on, but
it's half as often as it used to. No.
Man. So it's one of those things where it's like, what is the role of marketing? It's so misunderstood. There's so many things that marketing, I would venture to say, like, I've been in this for a couple of decades now.
Just a little bit.
What marketing used to be was still way more than what most people give it credit for. And it's one of those areas where until you can actually get really good at proving the value, what does $1 in marketing actually achieve? That's when you can start to open people up. Like, that's when you get buddies with the CFO. That's when the CEO starts paying attention and go, wait a second, it's more than just writing content. It's more than just a pretty website. It's actually a way to drive ROI and grow the business. That's that transition point. A lot of organizations don't get there, but I've seen it happen a few different times, and it's magical what it does. But yeah, when I'm using your Thor hammer, don't just expect that marketing is going to pretty it up. We have people that can do that, but man, they can do a lot more to make it way, way, way better.
Yeah. We could spend our time making it pretty, or we could, I don't know, bring you 20 more customers.
or
So,
200 or
or
2000.
200
I
or
mean, there's,
200,000.
I know it's different magnitudes. Obviously, the business side, and we get exposure to
Yeah,
a variety
these
of.
were 20 more billion-dollar customers. There we go. There we
Well, there you go. That's start talking interesting language. Yeah, yeah, we can
go.
work with them.
So where does this come from? What's the origin story of this supervillain of Pretty It Up and not even understanding what marketing is all about? And this is not new. Marketing's not. It's not like Chat GPT just came around the corner. We're like, what's that? It's like, no, we've been doing marketing for a bit.
You know what I think it is that there's most organizations, and you think of CEO, CRO, and I work with some fantastic individuals in those roles who get it. So I've been in different organizations where maybe that wasn't always the case. Just want to be very specific about that for my boss who might be listening. No, you're
Hey,
amazing.
shout out Best Boss Award.
Always, always. No, they really are, because they get that. But in what I've seen so many times is that they have no visibility into what marketing actually accomplishes. So if you think of like, what's the visibility of marketing typically in an organization? Like when you think, oh, marketing was so on so for that, it's like it's social media. But even then, they might not even realize that's who's writing it. It's press release. It's the website. It's going to be, the fact sheet or the brochure or the ebook or white paper, whatever have you, that is being sent to people. Oftentimes what I find is that the questions come back and it's like, oh, they're doing that. Our competitor's doing this. We need to own this. And the answer is, yeah, that's where a competitor got the idea from. They freaking copied us.
We're already
So
doing
it's
that.
it's that
Jeez.
missing understanding of there's such a, maybe the way I'll say it, there's such an opportunity to educate your leadership on what marketing provides to put them in the best possible position. Like your CEO, your chairman, your C-suite, they know what the product does. I mean, maybe it's not every single detail, or maybe it is. In my case, at my organization, it is. Like, CEO is amazing. He understands like literally every facet of every part of the business, but not everyone does. And there's an opportunity to educate them. And you have to be doing that stuff. If you don't do that stuff, how are they going to figure it out? They're going to judge you based on the press release. They're going to judge based on, hey, I Google, our main search terms and I don't find you on page 1. What the hell's wrong with you?
Right.
It's those sorts of
Right.
optics that are very, very incomplete pictures. So I think that's where it comes from. When you say, okay, well, marketing can touch this up. Yeah. I'll definitely have some graphic artists that can absolutely touch it up, and they'll do if that's all you ask of them. But how about look at the entire team and go, we need this to be a piece of performing content that gets attention and engagement at the top level of the funnel, actually converts. So people look at that and go, yeah, I'm actually going to go visit your website, or I'm going to go look on Glassdoor, or not Glassdoor, bad example, like Trust Radius, something like that, to start doing some diligence. You're going to go talk to Gartner to figure out who you are and if you are as good as you say you are. Starting that whole journey, depending on who you're talking to, that's really what you want marketing to be doing, and not just making it, a nice use of our brand's colors.
Now, I know you've got the dream setup where you're at now. Let's say you didn't. And the question I have for you is, can you teach the board and the leadership the right way to view marketing, or is that something you just acquire when you are picking where the next place is to go?
Well, that's a good question. There's two answers to that. I think the first answer is your ideal setup is where the board and the CEO, which is the two most important influencers. Everyone else is really important too. Hi, CFO. But
hello.
But realistically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find someone that gets it coming in, so that they can recognize what the problem is. That, you're going into, and I've gone into this too, where you go into some sort of interview or discussion, or let's just have a chat about the strategy of our organization.
Yeah.
And they're like, our website's fucked. Well, that's great. That's a wonderful observation. It probably is. But let's be honest about this. Is that really the driving problem? Or is there something else? That's the kind of stuff that gets me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And I think everyone should look as a red flag is that what do you think marketing does? Do you think it just makes a website? It goes back to the point we were talking about before. And if that's the case, well, great. Then that's what you're going to be doing when you join that organization. You're going to be fixing the website. So make sure you have a great webmaster that can actually, code a little bit in WordPress. Otherwise, you're going to have a really tough go, and you're going to have your CEO writing content for you on, basically your homepage and your hero and your H1s. You don't want that kind of stuff happening.
No.
You want them to go, we understand that there's an opportunity for marketing to influence this. And here's where we like our business to go. Here's what we value marketing's contribution in that. Now that's an ideal setup.
Right.
That's, those unicorns exist here and there, but in reality, you do have to educate them. Yes, they can be taught. And that's the board that can be taught because they want to be taught. They want to hear. They don't want to just be, no one wants to give orders to their CMO. Like, that's not a good place.
No.
They want to be hearing.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Like, because what those orders are going to be is it's going to sound like, make this look pretty. I want a press release that says that we're amazing, that media is going to pick up. So I want Bloomberg and Reuters to write about, hey, we just, announced that we're amazing. Please tell everybody this. I want a beautiful website that I don't know what it really does except look beautiful.
Right. And then tell everyone about how beautiful it is. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to be able to show my friends, look how beautiful our website is.
All customer email. Come look at our website for no other reason, just to see how pretty it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's some tongue in cheek, but we both know there's some reality built within that.
Sure.
It's a very teachable moment, but a lot of things, especially these days, it has to be very data oriented. So you can go into a situation like, for me, I'm more of a content person than lead generation. It's not like I don't have respect for both sides, but I lean into the fact that content can open a lot of doors, and being very focused on thought leadership can drive a heck of a lot of top of funnel engagement, which if you set it up right and do the right things and have the right trajectory, you can actually create a lot of conversion off of that by having a following, some advocacy, all that sort of stuff. It still has to be data oriented. I can't walk into, board meeting and say, we have the best thought leadership in the world. That's wonderful. So what?
Right.
What does that matter? Tell me something that actually means something in terms of our end result, which was increasing bookings by this, increasing EBITDA by this, increasing customers, reducing churn. Pick your favorite KPIs. And I do have some favorites, but you have to be able to tie it to that. And they want to hear that. Everyone wants to hear that. The CFO, who I think is one of the biggest allies of marketing, CEO, and the board all want to hear different perspectives, different points of view, but they all want to understand, show me the value of marketing through data that I understand.
So show me the value potentially with some of those KPIs. You mentioned you had some favorites, a few of your favorite things. What would you say? You have some absolute favorite KPIs that you...
One of my favorite, I do have some favorite KPIs. I also have some little micro numbers as well that I think I get super passionate about. So in terms of KPIs, like my biggest one, I hate CAC. Now, everyone who's a, PE side, anyone's an investor, anyone that even that the CMOs when you're in your group are just going to go, well, wait a second, everyone gives a shit about CAC. So how are you going to navigate around that one?
Right.
You don't navigate around it, but you have to think of, why are we spending what we're spending, and what industry and revenue cycle are we in? Like, for example, in my world, like, we're basically in corporate finance platforms, specifically within liquidity and treasury. Super fun area. I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. I've lived it for 25 years. I actually love it to the point that I came back to it. But the reality is that we'll just call it's a niche area.
Right.
It's very, very high switching costs, very high barriers to entry for competitors, and it's high switching costs. It's similar to anyone that's dealing with, say, SAP, Oracle in the ERP space, or other types of apps that are a bit intensive, not just from a cost, but also from a percentage of people's time to get up and running. So in that world of B2B software, we're one of the higher ones in terms of switching costs, which gives us a lot of long-term value. To me, I like to look at the fact of, okay, what are we spending and what's our lifetime value that we actually get there? So LTV CAC is one that I really like. in certain spaces. Now, again, I live in software and I live specifically in B2B applications. So I am going to lean towards that. There's going to be some, that are listeners that go, well, I don't care about that whatsoever. I actually purely care about CAC. In fact, there's a reason that we need to refine that and get that down. Sure. Like we're all in an EBITDA world now. The days
Sure.
of, multiples of revenue, unabated, unbridled spending. Doesn't matter if we make money. I mean, maybe they'll happen again. I doubt it, but maybe they'll happen again. But right now, we're in an EBITDA world where your valuation is a multiple of your EBITDA. So you have to be cash centric. You have to be focused on how much you're spending. But there's a means to an end. And if you're investing a heck of a lot in sales because that 3-year contract turns into a 10-year relationship most of the time, then yeah, you want to be a little upfront spending to get that initial engagement, which converts into pipeline, which secures that client. So I love LTV CAC. Love it, love it, love it. I also
It's a,
like net promoter scores.
oh,
Ooh, sorry,
before we
I
get to net
pivoted
promoter
pretty
score, yeah,
quick.
let's definitely talk about that. But it's the ratio of lifetime value and customer acquisition cost. It's not just looking at one of these in isolation, right? Because
Oh,
hey,
sorry. Yeah, yeah. Excellent
yeah,
point. Yeah, yeah. No, you're dead on right on that. It is for me. I say it's division.
yeah.
It's the ratio of LTV CAC. It's not minus. It's not plus. It's not exponential. No, we're just purely talking about the simple divide.
And I
Because
understand that these apps. I mean, I've been faced that with some of the more like payroll ones that's tied into healthcare, and it's like, and then when you have reps reach out, hey, change this real quick. It's like this is a 6 month, year long process to even decide if it's even worth it. This is a pain in the ass. Like I'm just not going to change
yeah.
lightly. So if I do pick something, I'm going to be there for a while. It makes sense to have a higher cost of acquisition if you need to, because you're going to have these people for such a long time versus some churn and burn, smaller B2B, tiny SaaS app that you can switch over in a second, right? So it's smart hearing you talk about, let's look at the overall context here, because you don't want to be comparing yourself to some other app, right? You go meet someone at a conference and and their CAC is like $4 and yours is like, say it's 400, right? So it's like, yeah, but it's a completely different context.
Oh, it is. It is. And that background is everything. And so that's why I say when I'm saying it, when I look at the comparables, like they really do have to line up. Like even if you think of what market are you in, and I'm speaking very, sort of B2B buyer, but are
Yeah,
you looking at enterprise level buyers? Like if you're
right.
looking at organizations that are 1 billion and above, you have an element of stickiness there that is a heck of a lot different than organizations that are 100 million in revenue. And that's, whether it's we're talking the States, we're talking globally, you're going to find those characteristics. Absolutely. You're also looking at just the infiltration. I was going to say stickiness, but I'm going to go with infiltration because that's a good one.
I like it.
Into the group, like into your users. So if you have, let's just say you have, on average, 5,000 users per client using your platform, then you have to think of, yeah, maybe I'm not going to lose that client because I'm so important, but am I going to go down to 4,000 users the moment we hit a recession?
Good point.
So it's that sort of LTV has to be measured in terms of retaining that revenue and the ability to replace that. So we look at things such as forgetting like any upsell cross sell that might be able to come into equation. How much of that, like what is our likelihood of being able to retain that revenue? And then as a separate decision, how can I actually replace that should there be some sort of downturn?
Right.
And so that's the sort of stuff that I think everyone does, but you need to look at the context of your space. If you don't look at the context of your space, you're going to be comparing against, I'm going to go in there and compare myself against, I don't know, pick your favorite software platform. And it doesn't make sense. Or we're in financial, it's financial software. Am I can compare myself against the bank? No. But that's where the education comes in and making sure that you're in alignment, like total lockstep with your CFO, so that what they're saying is what you're saying are the same thing, as opposed to you going, hey, have we thought about LTV? And the CFO is like, shut the hell up. We're not talking about that today. Like those are not the sorts of things that you want to have happen.
Such a great point that their numbers should be the same as your numbers. Quick way to find yourself in hot water in a conversation you don't want to have is when you're throwing out crazy marketing numbers and they don't line up with the rest of the organization. So I can see why the CFO is a strong point. You mentioned the NPS, getting into Net Promoter Score. I can see how that even ties back into the importance of that context of your lifetime value. Is that where the tie-in comes, or talk to me about that, the NPS side?
So there's two things. Yes, the tie-in does come there, and that's why, for a couple of different reasons. But the obvious one is that if they're happy, they're probably going to stay with you.
Right.
So
Right.
you could argue, well, there's maybe certain variables, like maybe that whole user thing I talked about. Maybe we might see 20% of our users go away.
Right.
But if they are happy, then they will most likely find a way to keep that whole. They're probably not going to be you're the first target when they have to start cutting back budgets. So there's that. But to me, the way more interesting part is actually utilizing our clients and leveraging their happiness, their advocacy, their passion for your business, and being able to parlay that into success with those organizations that aren't doing as much business with you. I do say that intentionally, or they haven't had the privilege of being a client of your organization yet at all.
Right.
And that effect, like, you want your clients to be happy because A, they'll stay, B, they'll buy more stuff or encourage others to do it. And then C, there'll be a reference, which you need in most places, certainly in B2B. Gosh knows you need those, especially as IT gets involved. And like, give me like 18 references. And you're like, okay, 18, that's going to be a little harder than just three.
Jeez.
And you want to have people proactively doing that. Like the example I'll give, anytime that anyone's gone for a job, right? You get picked off on LinkedIn and hey, someone's recruiting you and you feel a little warm and fuzzy about it. If they're targeting you, they've already talked to people that know you. Like
Wow.
that's happening, right? You think about it. And the back channel, the backdoor references, like all those things are either in play before they targeted you, or if it was more of a blanket outreach, that that's happening next. Like the references you give them. I mean, I do this when I'm hiring people. I don't really worry about the references they gave. I'm looking for the references they didn't give. And I want to know who worked with them. I want to find out who in my network has worked with them. And maybe it's 1, 2, 3 different degrees of Kevin Bacon separation. But the
Sure.
point is that that stuff happens. It happens also with your clients and your prospective clients. And you in marketing have to understand that and lean into that. So if there's a customer that needs something, like I'm in marketing, how often does the customer reach me on purpose? Not that often. But when they do, you got to make sure that you're doing your part and not just passing that off, because that's part of the customer experience. That CX drives that net promoter score. It drives their advocacy. It also drives when you have to reach out to them, like, knock, knock, knock. I need a speaker for this presentation. And I'd really like you to join me. And they'll be like, yeah, I remember that time I asked you to help me out and you passed me off to someone that also didn't give a shit.
Right.
So that's kind of built into it as well. So you need your customers to help build your business. It's really, really important. So I see things like NPS and a couple other different metrics there as indicative of you're doing a good job with your customers. They will help you with what you need done.
Right. It it's interesting how much marketing, even if we're behind the scenes in many aspects of the customer's journey, how we can impact that. I had a pretty terrible experience in a hotel. It was really kind of a fancy anniversary thing, and the hotel could really not care. Like, at least that's what they transmitted, was like, we really don't care. We hope you have a shitty day. Like, we'll see you later. So I shared on Twitter a little bit of a, hey, what's up, guys? Your brand is like way up here. That's what I was kind of expecting, for me and the missus. And sure enough, Twitter's writing back. Well, that's not good. Let's see what we can do to help you out here. Here's an email. Reach out to. And guess what? The email didn't respond. And so then I tweeted again, hey guys, thanks for the help with the email, but yeah, no one's home. And they're like, oh, we're so sorry. We'll figure it out. Okay, they'll respond to you. And so in my mind, I saw some marketing function acting as a way to help them recover some points on the NPS, because had that exchange not happen, it was getting lower by the moment, and now I know, okay, somebody there cares. Not everybody. The service still wasn't that good, but at least somebody engaged with me. I feel like that's sort of marketing, just getting a chance to play ball a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I like that you said that. I'm sorry for that experience, by the way.
Wasn't
We've all
you?
had those hotel
It
experiences.
wasn't you. Don't apologize.
No, but I feel for you because I got my 10-year anniversary coming up, and I kind of cringe a little bit, thinking, "Oh God, I don't want one of those screw ups."
It was good. I mean, horseback riding, massages,
Oh,
all
yeah.
just a great time until dinner.
All
But
right.
yeah,
Well,
that's a
I
story
need
for
some
after
tips
the
from you.
pod.
This is the conversation we're having after this.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so
I'll tell you where
there's kind
not
of
to
two
go,
things.
and that'll somehow tie into customer acquisition,
Well, which is kind
exactly
of
like
part
we're
of the whole
describing.
effect, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's kind of two parts to this for me. One is that when you're in that moment to work with your customers, it's really important to recognize your role within that chain of the customer experience. So that's huge. So in your case, um, obviously the people that you dealt with, like the staff, the frontline, they should have done a better job. But then you get a communication point, you get your little lifeline, then that really needs to deliver to compensate for the crap that you got beforehand. And that experience is a terrible one. My view is that that has to be perfect. That experience has to be perfect. Doesn't matter who you're dealing with, everyone in your organization, and this is just not a marketing thing, this is in general. Everyone's an ambassador to your organization. Everyone can make a difference. The second part, kind of going back to sort of marketing and maybe even team structure a little bit, is that I'm really passionate about client marketing, or you could call it customer marketing, whatever you want, whatever verbiage you want to use in your team.
you said
But
customer or client marketing.
yeah, I call it client marketing. That's what the way we construct it in our term, and that's what I've had it in previous ones as well. Because what I want to do is I want to get to the customer before that. I want to proactively give them things. Like, you want to react well in the moment. Absolutely. We all know those experiences in our personal lives or even professional lives where it just wasn't that good. And we don't forget those, by the way, as you know.
Right.
But I also want to get in front of them. I want to start creating an experience from the start so that they feel that they're engaged well before an issue happens. Because when something happens, and especially, then you're at the point where you go into Twitter, it's too late, right? Like, your brand is already tarnished a little bit in your view and
Totally.
anyone that follows you. So client marketing can help create some level of engagement in the front of that, but it can also start creating a perception of who this organization is that I'm working with. It's not just like, I'm in software, right? So it's not just the implementation of the partner team. It's not just the support desk. It's actually, here, we're telling you, here's what all your peers are doing. Here's the awards that some of your fellow clients won using this platform, which is an example we like to use. Here's, pick your poison in terms of, here's the features, the business outcomes, the value, the capabilities, the new module, whatever. There's a whole package of things, but I generally like to make sure that we're talking about business outcomes and not ourselves, because no one likes people that talk about themselves. We don't like it at dinner. We don't like it. I mean, I fly a lot, so I hate it when the person beside me starts talking about everything they do. And I'm just like, look, I got a book. Leave me the hell alone. Like, we know those experiences, right?
Especially when it's
No
a
one
good book.
likes that. Yeah, no, exactly. So you want to be able to talk about things that matter to your customers in addition to be, responding in the moment. So, as I love content and I love thought leadership, I'm equally passionate about client marketing because it gives you that avenue to help curate that client experience and to create an impression that we actually give a shit about you. We care about what you like affects you, how you want to drive your business. Like, we're in basically, I work with CFOs. We work with CFOs and their teams, like treasury and FP&A and all sorts of fun groups like that, who are amazing individuals. They have like business needs. Like, when something like, Silicon Valley Bank happened, a couple months ago, most of our clients weren't affected because we have big clients. They didn't do a lot of business with that particular platform, but the few that did, we wanted to make sure, hey, we understand that you got this problem. You need to, in the moment, figure out, how much cash do I have at this bank that just went belly up? And what do I do about it? Those are the sorts of things that people need in that moment. You want to basically, in advance, be able to tell them, here's what this looks like, because there's more banking issues that are going to happen at some point. I want to make sure that every one of our clients understands you have real-time visibility into your cash, which is what we do. You have real-time accessibility to payments, so that snap of a finger, you can get your money the hell out of wherever it needs to get out of and into somewhere that's more aligned to your organization's principles for investments. These are the sorts of things that matter. Customers want to know that. They don't want to have to go, oh crap, what do I do now? Well, let's call whoever we need to call and try and figure it out. They'd love to know proactively what that experience looks like. So I want to talk in things that matter to them, rather than saying, hey, we got this wonderful new model, you should buy it.
Right.
Probably
Yeah.
not that bluntly, but still, like, if that's what they're getting, because we're all smart people, we know when we're being sold. I don't want to be
Yeah.
sold to. I want someone to say, hey, from your marketing issues, I heard you on Casey's podcast and it was amazing. So what I want to do is be able to help you with this thing you talked about with client marketing. Someone gets in my inbox like that, probably just set myself up for something there, but someone gets in my
You will in a
inbox like
second.
that,
Yeah.
I'm probably reading it.
Yeah.
I read, God knows, like 0.5% of what comes in.
Right.
Most of it goes to spam unintentionally. I don't have time to read 1,000 emails a day. Maybe 500 is pushing it. So that's the sort of thing that you want to be in a position where you're talking language that matters to your end user.
Dude, so good. Giving them terms that they can not only understand but know that it's about them. The way you're talking about them is about them. You're not talking about them on the plane, and you're expressing that you give a shit about them at the same time. It's things they want to hear, things that are helpful, and things that convey I care. I'm in this for you. I'm not in this for my module, my widget.
Yeah, it's totally true. Like, there's not to belabor the point too much, but
Yeah, no.
my first CEO, so when I was out of school, my very first job in tech, which I loved enough to stay in, and he was like, customers first, actually clients first was a specific saying, clients first, always. And he had a rule, which he probably didn't invent, but I thought he did because he was amazing. And it was just the daylight rule. Make sure that before the sun goes down, you've responded to every client, no matter who you are, where you are in the business, always. And that, I mean, I was young and impressionable at the time, but it stuck with me, and I still remember it to this day. And I still basically make sure my team lives by those values, because that's your mission, is to make sure that your clients are successful.
I love that. I'm definitely going to use that. You call it the daylight
The daylight rule.
rule.
So, and I've heard different versions of it. I've heard people call it sundown rule, which is basically the same thing, different words. You could say the 24 hours, which doesn't have the same ring to it. And in fairness, 24 hours, especially when you're working in multiple time zones, may not actually work nearly as well, because you may totally miss who
Sure.
you're actually trying to get back to. But I like it as a daylight rule. As long as there's daylight, or when there's not daylight, that means it's too late.
See, I was going to rename it the Bob Stark Corollary,
Yeah, that's also legit. Yeah.
Well, hey, you mentioned the marketing issues. What would you, and here I'm going to open you up to some really good targeted messages, but what would you say are the challenges? Like, you've got some great alignment, you've got the KPIs. What would you say is is an existing challenge that you're actively working on?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, my focus always is that if you're standing still, I mean, just give up and leave. Like, there's no point, right? Like, you can't just keep doing the same shit day after day, week after week, etc. There has to be a progression, because the way the buying cycles work, doesn't matter what industry you're in, there's progression. Everything evolves. And so you have to do that as well. So we're in constant transformation mode, always. And sometimes some things are longer tail. Like, you wanted, as an example, we just completely rebuilt and transformed our web strategy last year, where, the start of that is firstly build a website. You need one that actually is we'll call it a little bit more scalable and a little bit more optimized for global, because we're a multi-language, multi-geographic company. And then once you build that framework, if you will, it's such a cliche term, I'm going to go with it anyways. Then you're basically redesigning your entire SEO strategy, your entire content strategy. Everything is based on that. So when I'm looking at challenges, one thing that I'm always focused on is how are we creating a buyer journey digitally, because we're post COVID. So no one really wants to meet in person the same degree they did before. You don't get nearly the same impact in live events like you used to. So you have to recognize that this is a digital buying experience. You may meet them somewhere along the way, but the reality is that before they talk to you, they've researched you. After they talk to you, they're still researching you. Make sure that that experience online, in terms of like sequentially, is the way that you want it to be. Make sure that they're clicking in the places you want them to see. Make sure they're finding everything so that you're actually able to extend that web journey, not as a visit, because a visit, I mean, you can't even rely on those numbers half the time. I mean, forget, old Google Analytics versus GA4. I mean, the kind of stuff where you probably do it as well as I do, Casey, is that I click on a browser, someone sends me a link or something, and I look at that. I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting. I'm going to take a look. And then I open it and I leave it on my tab. And I'm like, if it's open on one of my 20, I don't go more than that usually, browser windows, tabs that are open. If it's there, I'm going to get to it at some point this week. Yeah. It's there, right? Like, I'm not losing it.
Totally.
But that obviously screws with your web metrics completely, because you're like, wow, time on site so long.
24 hours. This guy's reading everything.
Exactly. But yet he only bounced through 2 pages. What's going on here exactly? These are the sorts of things that you have to be able to think about. What does that buying experience really look like? And there's different people that are going to look at different things. You need to understand that journey. So if you're marketing to the CMO, as an example, lots of us are, that CMO journey means that you have to assume that they're going to have a limited amount of time. They're going to look at whatever link, not probably your homepage, although they might actually come through the front door, but they're probably going to click on something that was sent to them. And they're going to look for, probably very early in the page, what else should I look at in the 3 minutes that I'm going to spend on this particular organization? And that's usually what my attention span is. You could argue a lot less, and my team will probably say it's a lot less. But the fact is that you have this very curated experience for your marketing executives. But that said, if you're trying to hit the user, then you probably have a much wider array of information needs to be put in there. And so that's the kind of stuff that I look for when I'm trying to solve something, is that if I'm looking for, let's just say, I'll just give a fun problem, like really detailed one. If you look at from website, right, you look at translations. So many organizations out there, they use WordPress or something similar to it, and they'll have their English site,
sure,
or American or Canadian or something like that. And then they'll have their other sites. And if they probably move from subdomain to subfolder, because that's really a smarter way to do it. But then they get into content translation. How do I keep these darn things in sync? How do I make sure that my content, when I put out a press release or an ebook or something like that, how do I make sure it goes from English to Italian into German into Spanish and Japanese? It's not just simultaneously, but so the buying experience is either the same, or it's just different enough to be localized for, hey, how Japanese consume content versus how for American or Canadian or UK or something like that.
Right.
Those are the sorts of things you have to find a way to do that automatically. There's no great tools that I've seen. Obviously, people coming into my inbox are like, wait a second, I have a solution for this.
Hey,
but I haven't seen one that actually, outside of basically just using a ChatGPT script, that can basically yank stuff out, translate, and then put stuff back in. So at least you have that part dealt with. Those are sorts of little business problems that I'm looking to routinely find ways to make it a more efficient experience to run a global website. So that's like a small thing within a grander thing, which is the grander objective is that I want a consistent web experience. So if someone's coming in, whether they're basically, American English, UK English, Italian, by the way, not the same, but Italian, German.
I want them to have these are Zeds down here in the United States.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, as a Canadian, I kind of have that. We'll call it foot in both places, but you want that to be similar, in a way that individual, especially if they're multilingual, they can feel that, oh yeah, I'm going to read this in English. Ooh, that's super technical. I'm going to switch to my native language, which is German. That it's the same thing. And you
Yeah.
didn't suddenly just get out of sync because, oof, well, it's hard to translate things to German and keep that up to date. That's the sort of things that I don't say struggle with, but that's one that takes a bit of energy and took a lot of thinking when we had to redesign our web strategy last year.
It really just goes to show it's nice to say that we've added X language to the site, but that incurs an ongoing cost. And every time we make future changes, now we've got this localization that's occurring. And to your point, it's not an automatic button that just
I love to see the magic button. The magic,
yeah,
you know what, actually, I don't say it's a magic button. It's not yet a magic button. I welcome anyone's input, by the way, that makes this into a magic button.
sure.
We use ChatGPT for our translations. We used to use agencies. We then switched to a tool called DeepL, which actually I love a lot. But we found ChatGPT was just a little bit easier for us, and it's public facing stuff, so we didn't really have any privacy concerns about large language models. So we use that for our translations, and we have a process where basically it just allows you to semi-automate to the
Oh,
point where it gets validated by an individual, which is smart because let's face it, no matter who's translating, you need someone technical, like in your business, to be able to go, "That's a stupid word. Use that one instead." So
right.
that's the
There
point.
needs to be that little bit, right? Because the because you could wind up saying hot dog instead of P&L or something.
Which would be kind of funny, actually,
It would be kind of funny.
but because most people are like, "Oh, this company's awesome." They talk about hot dogs, but but in reality, yeah, you have to validate, and that makes sense. But it's the how you validate and how much pain and attention that is. So
Right.
I like to have, like for us, I like to have our local users look at it in the site as opposed to like in a Word or Google Doc. And so it's that sort of thing where we need to create a process that's super simple and easy so that the multitude of pieces of content, like we put out hundreds of things, every quarter. So it's a fair bit. And these are like not just blogs, but ebooks and all sorts of other fancy things that take
Yeah.
a lot of words. We want to make sure that everyone has access to that so that we're not favoring a certain aspect geography or funneling lead generation in a certain way. Because otherwise, if we had half the content for Italy that we do for France, then we're creating a disproportionate, table setting that is
Right.
very, very difficult to then understand. Well, how come that region is performing lesser than the other? Is it because we have a crappy content strategy that's not deploying globally? I mean, how do you know? Let's not introduce new variables that we don't have to. Let's make things simple and easy.
Right. At least if the content is close to one to one, at least you know. Wouldn't that be horrible to find out that the only reason the poor team in some country is not doing as well is because we just didn't translate enough of that late stage content for them. But it's a real
Oh
concern to
yeah.
make sure it's taken care of.
Well, I think most people listen to this are gonna go, yeah, been there, because
Yeah.
it's not easy. And then
Right.
you got the added, we'll call it entertainment value of what about localized content? What about the
Yeah.
local flavor? Like one of my favorite markets, in fact, actually my favorite business city of all to ever travel to is Tokyo. I love the
I do
Japanese.
too.
I love
Yeah.
Japan. I love the Japanese market, and I really like the organizations we work with there because they deal with things in a very methodical way. Um,
Right.
they also have a certain way that they'll react to and engage with your content, which is very different than Americans, which ironically are different than Canadians too, despite the
Mm.
fact that we share many things. That localization, you have to take that into account to a certain point. So if you're doing a white paper, that white paper is probably going to be a little bit different, maybe not too
Right.
different, but that blog better be different between what you're saying. Like you think, here in the States, I'll say here in the States and in Canada, but same difference for this conversation.
Close enough.
So yeah, could get steward for saying same difference. But
True.
in
True.
terms of what we're talking about for this is that from a blog standpoint, there's the, hey, I'm going to educate you with thought leadership. And then boom, I'm going to hit you with doom and gloom because damn it, you're going to lose your freaking job if you don't get this shit right. That's the
Right.
sort of, that works because I read stuff. I'm like, oh, that's really nice to know. I feel educated now. And is that going to make me buy something? Is that going to make me double down on that, research in that organization or maybe even going forth and getting into a buying cycle? Probably not. If you scare the crap out of me, yeah, I might engage with that a little bit more. And so, as I'm going to call it North Americans, we react to that and engage with that very differently than other markets where you just can't do that. It's not
Right.
going to fly. And so you do have to have some level of localization. When I say things like translation, yeah, there's a translation solution. You can automate. Our semi-automation, 90% automated, is pretty good for keeping our sites in sync. But we also, that validation level is also a localization or
Mm.
personalization to that geography level where I have, it's not just anyone, it's literally my product marketing team in each region. They're the ones that are evaluating that in concert with demand generation. Demand gen is going to be able to look at that and go, that actually reads really well. This is the kind of stuff, it aligns with SEO. We're good. And then our product team is like, we need to make sure that we're speaking the language of our buyer. And this is the
Right.
business problem that we need to make crystal clear that we're solving for them. So there's a partnership
Okay.
there. It doesn't need to be exhaustive. Even when we're talking like, a blog, 1,000 words, this is like a 20-minute exercise combined
Sure.
between two people to validate. It's not too much for most organizations, but you do have to do that stuff because a literal translation, yeah, you could say hot dog instead of P&L, but a good literal translation still may miss context or opportunities to align to what the buying audience really would care about and how they engage with you. Because at the end of the game, engagement is absolutely what matters. We talked about KPIs before. I don't look at impressions too much at the top of funnel. Like, we have a decent media strategy. We get published in some cool places, get on TV
Sure.
and stuff like that sometimes. So our like UVMs are through the roof. Like you can almost argue we can make 1 billion depending if we have some really good data reports out. So what? It's that, that just makes the funnel
Mm.
look something ridiculous like this. And what we really need is to ensure that there's an engagement, that we have that following, that advocacy, because that's the stuff that you can convert into
Yeah.
something in a pipeline. Or, this is my favorite part, the influencing of others that might get into the pipeline. Hey, I don't need this, but I heard that this organization is pretty damn good at this. You might want to take a look at them. And that's the kind of, I don't say viral because I'm in finance, not a lot of viral going on in our world, but that's the sort of influence that can actually create some nice momentum.
Man, I feel like we can do a whole another show on geo, on probably on content too. I don't know. So I'll start writing up a list. I'll send you later for all the different shows we'll have to do together to
Please do.
cover this. My next question really is like, who are you? Did you know that you were going to be a marketing leader? Like little Bob, did he know he was going to be, doing managing the translations across multiple geos and marketing and content? I mean, take me back in time.
Well, we go way back in time. As a Canadian, I thought I'm going to be a hockey player. And then I realized I was growing up on the West Coast and I realized that you can't skate outside. So that wasn't going to happen.
Just not cold enough?
No, it's not cold enough. I mean,
Huh.
climate change has made it a little bit easier, like once a year where I can actually skate on the lake across from my
Oh,
house.
sure.
But so my kids actually have had that privilege that I never had growing up. But in reality, hockey wasn't going to happen. I'm 5'11", and these days, even back in the day, that wasn't quite big enough to make an impact, and
Jeez,
I'd
that's
get
so crazy to
decimated
think
now.
about.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, basketball and football were an option. So we put the sporting aside for a little bit. End up going to school for marketing and finance,
Yeah.
and I was really lucky. Like I went to a school called Simon Fraser in Vancouver, outside Vancouver, and they had this at the time a bit new age was this co-op program, basically internship, speak American, but it was a co-op, so it was basically paid internships. You had to do 4 of these terms throughout your school, and I got to work with basically what were now fintechs. Obviously, I'm old, so fintechs didn't
Yeah.
exist, that word. But I got to work with biotech. I got to work with one that was
Man.
specifically financial software. I basically just worked in the tech side and figured out this is cool stuff. So I got super lucky through the connections I made in that to land a job that was basically financial software in marketing. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Wow.
marketing, check. Finance, because God knows I spent
Check.
enough time figuring out how to price derivatives that I'm like, wait a second, I can do both these things together. This is awesome. And that industry is actually the one that I'm still in. So, except for 1 year where I decided to take a starter CMO job just to understand how that worked at a much smaller company, kind of like a starter marriage, you get a starter CMO job.
Sure,
I encourage
right.
everyone to do it. I've stayed in treasury, like specifically treasury is a subset of finance technology on the marketing side. Different roles, everything, as we were baby organizations, sometimes it'd be much more like still content, product marketing, focus on sales enablement, which I think I'm very passionate about that being really, really important to tie high level marketing prop into actual sales execution. But that was the trajectory, is that just continued building, looking for experiences for good or for bad. The little company that I joined way back when, 25 years ago, got acquired by a very large organization and then got moved around within that very large organization. And so as a result, I got different experiences, different viewpoints without ever having to quit my job. Generally, you kind of have to, move to get those
Right.
experiences. And I
Sure.
was lucky enough that I really only had to quit my job once to come to the organization I'm now at, which is Kyriba. And then one time at Kyriba, I gave my notice to take my starter CMO job.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I boomeranged back because, in fairness, I learned a lot of the key things that I had been missing. I'd been much focused on product marketing and content marketing, sales enablement, more like the go-to market, but not really as much the digital side and the lead generation side. And I felt that was a missing opportunity.
Right.
Just like when I took roles doing sales and doing that for several years as well, because I felt these are building blocks that you really need to understand. You can't manage a team for lead generation and demand gen if you haven't done it. You can't
Right.
actually tell salespeople, no, here's what you do, if you haven't been in their shoes and sold. And that credibility plays through. So for me, I mean, the simple way I look at it is that you have to be able to establish credibility in order to tell people what to do. And if you want to try and convince them of something they're not sure they want to agree with, or you want to try and convince them, no, this is the way, very Mandalorian, then you
Right.
have to have lived in those shoes. You have to be able to bring something to the table. And otherwise, they're just going to go, you don't know. You haven't done that. And
Right.
my response is, yeah, I have. And that allows a rapport that makes it very much of a collaborative engagement. So I work with sales on even footing. Sales
Yeah.
doesn't tell marketing what to do. Marketing tells sales what to do, but in a collaborative way that works for what they need. So
Sick.
there's a longer answer there, but I think in terms of the short one, there's a lot of different building blocks. There's different ways to do it. You don't want to stay at an organization too long. You can get stale. You also don't want to stay in a role too long without building the blocks, that experience that ultimately makes you an effective CMO. And I think there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different paths, but the one I took seemed to work out all right so far. But I think I
Man,
was old before. I'm young, so in fact, there's still more to go.
super young. Yeah, it's that Vancouver era keeping you young. Bob, thank you so much for coming on here. I literally could talk to you for hours about these things. And when I look at the clock, I'm like, where the hell did the time go? This has absolutely been a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks, Casey, for the opportunity. I love the podcast, and I can't wait to listen to more of them.
Yeah, yeah, and with you on it too, of course. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this with someone else, one person, 9,000 people, 3 people, whatever, but put your take on it. That's thought leadership. And with that, Bob, thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Casey. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone, this has been another crazy episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.